Hello and welcome to the video. This is a video to show some of the cool stuff inside Mission Planner that you might not have seen. Now, Mission Planner is the companion software that goes along with the Ardu Pilot family of technology. So there's Ardu Plane, Ardu Copter, which does multi-rotors and stuff. You've got Ardu Rover, Ardu Boat, Ardu Sub even. But the Mission Planner stuff is what you use to initially set it up and then to configure it, monitor it. You can use it as a ground station, and you can also set up missions for the craft to fly autonomously. Now, this is a much bigger feature set than things that you might get in other flight control technology like iNav. And that's why things like the Pixhawk, the hardware is used by a lot of professional pilots to actually put their rigs together. Now, I'm thinking of doing another modern Pixhawk series with all the latest technology, but this one is all about this Mission Planner stuff. Now, Mission Planner is a free bit of software. You can download it. Huge thank you to Michael Osborne and the developers for continuing to update this stuff. It's all been revised quite recently, so we're now on version 4.0 of Ardocopter. We're now on version 4.0 of Ardu Plane, and Mission Planner is just getting revised as well. And I was at 3DXR the other day. Now, 3DXR are the people that I get all of my Pixhawk technology from. Ben up at 3DXR is fantastic. I'll put a link down below. Go and have a look at their store. If you're interested in large UAV systems or, you know, kind of prosumer professional grade kit, they have everything you're going to need. But I was up there and we were talking about a couple of projects that we're thinking of doing. And he started to do things inside Mission Planner. And I said, whoa, what was that? Go back, show me that. Now, I spend a lot of time in Mission Planner, but the way it tends to work is that you just use the stuff that you know, that you're familiar with. But because Ben is kind of involved in this quite heavily, he showed me loads of stuff. So I said, okay, Ben, hang on a minute. We've got to screen grab this so I can kind of show the people this, because this is cool stuff. So let me hand over to Ben and he can go through this and kind of show you how it all works.
Okay, so here's some tips, tricks with Mission Planner. So we're assuming that you've installed the latest version of Mission Planner. You've done a clean installed it from the MSI file, and also have all the latest drivers required to connect to your flight controller. So in this case, we're using Mission Planner for the ground control station, and we'll just have a look at the screens that there are first and some of the sort of basic overview. So when you're going to connect to your drone, either via USB or radio, we have our handy drop-down menus here to choose the correct COM port and also the baud rate. So 115200 is USB, and most telemetry radios are 57600. The next screen is the plan screen. This is where you'll carry out your waypoint missions, uploading and reading them from your drone. The setup screens you'll have seen during the initial setup of your flight controller. Configuration, adjusting various parameters. So we're not connected to a drone here, so we're not seeing the board specific parameters, but we have some Mission Planner's settings. While we're on the screen, I'm just going to show you a couple of features. The layout, we're using the advanced, so this shows us extra features that aren't available in the standard. And we also have the option here to enable Altitude Angel. So this requires logging in to Altitude Angel in order to get some of the flight restriction zones. You may also wish to disable the flight recording and the reporting of flights. And the next window, we have simulation. So we'll shortly be showing you how to simulate a mission on one vehicle, and also a new feature that's been added is to simulate a swarm. And on the help screen here, it does give you some tips as to what some of the keyboard shortcuts are, and it's also a point where you can check for updates and also install beta updates. One thing worth noting, when you do perform an update, have a look through the changelog and see what new features have been added since the previous version. So here we will see the 1.3.7, which is what we're using now, all the additional features that have been added. Okay, so let's go back to our flight data screen. We have our industrial standard HUD here, which is going to show us all the information we need to know about the vehicle's status in flight, such as our airspeed, ground speed, height, and we'll also get angles the drone's flying at, and we'll also have our telemetry link. The EKF icon here, so the extended Kalman filter, if there is some sort of issue with your GPS or compass, this may be flashing red, and if we click on it, this will be able to tell us what the cause of the problem is. So if our compass was red, in this case on a bar, it would be just some sort of compass calibration issue. When you first start the drone, and before it's got a solid GPS lock, you'll often see position and velocity errors. This is normal until it's got a good fix. So moments after booting up your drone, I'd expect to see these red, and then it'll settle. We can add extra markers to our screen here by right-clicking and user items, and we'll be oversaturated with a list here. I can see already satellite count has been added. If you, for example, use a second GPS, you could add the second GPS and get a sat count from that. And there's other features you might want to put on this top screen, such as time in the air, minutes and seconds, and that will give you a counter, and they do just pile up from this part here. The lower screen here, currently we have a 3x3 grid with various different readings on. If we wanted to make this display more data, I can right click and do set view count. So let's say Lee needs 4x4, and these are populated with no particular parameter, but we'll add some readings to those by double click. And let's say we actually want to know airspeed ratio, because we're calibrating an airspeed sensor on a plane, so this is a number we want to see settle out. Maybe we also want wind velocity, so wind velocity, that would give us the wind speed estimate once the drone's been flying for a short period of time. So these could be very platform specific. Maybe you want more wind and airspeed information for a plane, and on a multi-rotor you might want to have your current draw in big and your remaining capacity. Most things in Mission Planner, when you double click, will pop out. So if I double click on the hood, it has now popped out, and if I was using a dual screen setup, I could send it off to another screen. If I close it, it will return. We have our preview map here. If I didn't want to use this particular map, and I go into the plan page, I have a whole drop down here of different maps that might be suitable for different parts of the world. So let's say we fancied the hybrid map showing road names, and here we have our names, and if I registered right, we might even be on here. If I go back to the data screen now, we've changed to the hybrid map as well. There might be a little bit of time until it refreshes and downloads the tiles. On the flight planning screen, let's imagine we're going to fly in a location and we need to have mapping data, but we've got no internet. So I'm just going to pick a arbitrary location, which will be our home point, and I know that I won't be able to get internet connection in the field, so I'm going to prefetch some of these maps. So with the window loaded, I can go right click, map tool, prefetch, and we haven't defined an area to prefetch, so it's going to take the whole screen into consideration. And we'll set the zoom level to 20. Now this might be quite time consuming, and there might not be any need to download the whole screen, so let's cancel that and do a little trick. If I know we're only interested in a square, I can hold down Alt and drag a box, and now if I do the prefetch, map tool, prefetch, it will only do the designated area. Depending on the area you need to prefetch, this could be quite time consuming. If it's a large area or half a country, you might need to leave it running overnight. You could reduce the zoom level, so zoom level 16, which we're currently doing, that is sufficient for most missions. If you need high detail, you can go to 18 or to 20, but the number of tiles increases and it takes a lot longer. So if we cancel at any point, whatever it has downloaded will be saved. I'll show you a few other tricks on flight planning. So the arbitrary area here we have on screen, take a hazarded a guess that it is very hilly. So let's have a look how we can check if we were going to perhaps hit something in flight. So I'm going to set my default altitude to 50 meters in this case. and this is relative to the takeoff location. So let's try and set up a potential crash to the hillside. So I'm just planning a mission here. We've got a takeoff. We're just going to fly around at 50 meters over what looks like the ridge of a hill. How could I check if this was going to run into the side of this hill here? I'll right click, map tool, and I can use an elevation graph. Now in this case, the red is the aeroplane's altitude in this case, and the blue is what the terrain's doing. So this is the point where we would hit the mountain. So this is a handy tool just to check that you have planned your mission correctly, so not to avoid any hilly terrain. The data, the terrain data, it's accurate, but it is not very high resolution. So the default spacing between measurements is 100 meters. So for steep changes in altitude, there's always a possibility for error. Another little trick we can do, because the system is capable of downloading this terrain data, it can also be loaded onto the aircraft, and it can be used to follow the terrain. So if I change from relative to terrain, I'm just going to slightly redraw this mission to exaggerate the effects. So still at 50 meters. Let's have a look at our elevation graph now. And what we're seeing here is we'd set a height of 50 meters above the ground, and we're kind of following the terrain. These very steep changes here, because of the way the terrain looks ahead, on a aeroplane it won't try and follow this very steep dip, but it has followed this incline, and it's smoothed out this, again, very steep section here. So that would be a way of safely flying over this hilly region without any contact to the ground. We can also visualize the terrain with the shortcut Control W, and this is a new menu that came in a few versions ago, but we could also simulate the terrain, and we can put in various clearances and the height above the ground, and this will give us a visual indication of what the terrain is like. There's also an RF propagation map that gives an indication of where we would get RF signal from our home point. I'm going to show you now a feature when you're planning a survey mission for setting up your particular camera. So let's clear this mission. We're going to imagine that we have an area we want to survey with a new camera that's not currently on the list of cameras. So I'm going to draw a polygon. So I used a handy little shortcut on the top left. Let's make it a better square. I'm going to go into our auto waypoint, survey grid, and I need to use a camera that it's not on this list. So what can I do? First of all, I need the advanced options, and I go into camera config. Now what I could do is look up the parameters of the camera. So in this case, the camera I've got is a Sony RX1R Mark II. I could look up all the details about the camera and the lens and type these in manually. In this case, I have took a photograph, and Mission Planner is able to pull the data off the photograph and populate this box for me. So load the image as a JPEG. On your camera, do not try and load a raw photo, it won't work because that needs some processing. But basic principle is that the survey tool will read the camera EXIF data, and it will populate these boxes with your lens, information about the sensor, and the actual overall image size. We can then save this and name it to our camera, and when we go to use it, in this case I'm going to use a similar camera, the A7R, our grid spacing will be relevant to the camera. So when we put in our overlap and height, it will be correct, and you won't just have used a generic camera giving you bad results. There's a couple of other little features in here. If you've saved your completed mission, you can't go back and edit this grid. But if you had a very complex polygon drawn following boundaries of fields. And what you might want to do on a day, if the wind is in the unfavourable direction, you might need to come back to this screen and change the angle, for example, to be crosswind if that's what you required. So it's sometimes handy to be able to save this screen, and in this case it's Control S, and you can save this to a file, and this is a grid. And then on the day of your flight, you can maybe put your takeoff point in. You can open this window again in your complex drawn grid and make the final adjustments to the settings. Maybe you decide to fly lower, change the angle, change the speed. It's just a quick way to edit a grid if you spent a long time drawing it. A common issue people have is they go to Mission Planner and they have, for example, a plane or a copter, and when they go to do a mission, because they haven't connected to a vehicle, it has the wrong vehicle connected. So I know that this thinks it's connected to a plane even though we're not. So I'll check that by going takeoff. It asks for a height and also asks for a pitch. So that means we are currently a plane. So we don't want to start planning a mission for a copter when we're not connected right. So there's a little secret button up here where we can then connect to a copter. And it'll fail, but we should now have the correct takeoff that's relative to a copter. Or you could restart and a default as a copter. We have different coordinate systems. So Geo is the most common, but you also have UTM and a military grid reference system. We have the ability to load and save waypoints to your desktop, and below that is writing it to your Xorg. We also have, with Copter and Plane 4.0, we have improvements to fences. So we have keep out zones or keep in zones. And when you are trying to draw your fence, what you must do is, instead of being on mission here, you need to be on fence. And you must draw either an inclusion or an exclusion fence. So we'll select it here. I'm going to start by putting 1 point down, and we want to have, in this case, a polygon exclusion. So once we've got the 4 points drawn and labelled as polygon exclusion, this will be an area that the drone cannot fly into, and depending on your fence action, it may be that it does an RTL or that it just turns away. I'm going to quickly show you simulation. So a really handy feature for a new type of aircraft, or just to check some of your settings. So on the simulation screen, I've selected quad plane and connected to a plane. It downloads the CITL software, so the software in the loop, and we are now connected to a fixed wing. What I can do on here is plan a mission. So we now have a plane on the screen. This is our simulated plane. Let's give it a takeoff. Now we're actually a VTOL. Let's get back to the correct mission screen. And we can take off. And what I can do here is change this to a VTOL takeoff, because we're going to simulate a VTOL. I'm going to change my default altitude to 100 meters, and I'm going to do a few little clicks around, and then I'm going to have a VTOL land. So let's imagine I want to check my VTOL behavior to see if it's going to return in the VTOL multi-copter format, or if it'll fly as a plane and then transition, which is what I'm hoping for. So I've done a mission here, very simple, with VTOL takeoff, some waypoints, and VTOL land. I can now write these to the simulator. Let's make sure the simulator's got them. Okay, it has got them. And then I can go to the flight data screen and actually set this away. So let's arm, and let's put it into auto. And we have liftoff, takeoff. So Our plane now is going to our takeoff altitude of 10 meters, and now it has gone into forward flight, 25 meters a second, and it's working its way through. This is a good representation of how your plane will actually fly. And if you go into your settings and adjust parameters such as the cruise speed and bank angles, it really does help to simulate your missions. So let's say here, what I want to know is, when I RTL, will it instantly turn into a VTOL and hover like a multirotor, or will it fly back as a plane and transition? So let's press RTL. Good. Its speed is still high, so it is in forward flight. Let's see what happens to its height. So we are descending, so that makes me think our RTL height is lower. And let's have a look at what happens as we approach the home point. What I'm hoping will happen, the speed will reduce and it'll go into a hover. Okay, so what I can confirm from this little test is that our settings are wrong. So the benefit as to why we have SITL and simulation. So what I think we have here is our return to home parameters are wrong for this VTOL. So it's much nicer to do this in simulation than on real life. In this case, I could go in here to my setup, to config, and I could have a look at, let's find out what this issue is. So full parameter list, let's just type in RTL, and let's try and work out if we have our RTL action. So here we go, QRTL mode. So we definitely haven't set our RTL options up correctly. Yeah, so what I would do next is change some of the settings and reload the simulator until I have the desired action. So at the moment this is basically showing a plain RTL, not a VTOL RTL. Oh, one other thing we can do while this simulator is running, we could look at a 3D map of this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change our radius to be a bit bigger because I don't want this high bank angle. So while we're in simulation, I can do things like loiter, and I can set the radius to be bigger, and let's just get it performing a bigger circle. Now as I'm doing these commands, this is exactly what you could do to a real plane. You could adjust settings while it's in flight. You can use modes like guided mode. What I've done here is just put it into loiter by the press of a button, and I've made the loiter radius bigger. I'm going to load our 3D view, so I'll use the shortcut Control F, and I'm going to look for 3D map, and we'll just give it a few seconds to load. And as it starts to download our map data, the resolution will improve. The red line we're seeing here is part of our mission, and we should get a little bit higher resolution on the ground. Or the other issue could be that there's not much image data of this particular location. It is a hilly moorland, so our picture might not get much better. Okay. So what I'd recommend doing for this is try your regular flying location, simulate some missions, and try this 3D view and see if it resembles what you see from the air in FPV.
So there you go, loads of cool stuff in Mission Planner. Hopefully that was interesting for those of you that are Mission Planner users already. There's some new stuff in there that maybe you didn't know about. And secondly, if you've never used Mission Planner, hopefully you're looking at that and thinking, oh, that's quite cool stuff. If you are, then go and check out my Ardu plane builds. I'll put links down below, and my Pixhook series as well, that kind of goes through how you use stuff like Mission Planner with the hardware and set everything up. Thank you for watching my video and watching right to the very end. If you want to find out what I'm currently working on, you can follow me on social media by searching for Painless360 in the usual places. If you'd like to become part of the inner circle, then you can become a Patreon. Details are in the description and you get lots of additional benefits. Check out the playlist section on the channel too. I organise all of my videos into playlists, and it's called something like Introduction to or for Beginners. All of the content is aimed so that you can start at the very beginning, and it teaches you that subject, starting with simple principles and moving up to teach you everything you need to know.